Endurance Race's biggest series is returning, the FIA World Endurance Championship, a series that is still relatively young in the world of racing, but rooted in the history of motorsports for over 70 years, with lots of old and new flavors to enjoy. Over 35 cars make up the grid, spread between two classes, with huge varieties in shape, sound, and performance. But how did we get here? In this video, we'll look through the history of the World Endurance Championship, as well as what preceded it, the current drivers, the classes, and the wonderful circuits that we'll be tackling. A global sports car championship featuring the biggest and most prestigious races in the world was not a new idea, but one of almost ancient origins. In 1953, the World Sports Car Championship was formed, containing at the time the 12 hours of Sebring, Mille Miglia, 24 hours of Le Mans, 24 hours of Spa, 1,000 kilometers of the Nürburgring, RAC Tourist Trophy, and Carrera Pan America. Two of the races weren't actually permanent road courses, but actually rally races between two destinations. Cars often varied in shape and size during this time, but it wasn't unusual for some of the fastest cars to be from the biggest brands like Ferrari and Mercedes. Some form of combination of a sports car slash prototype top class and a GT secondary class was the standard throughout the 60s and 70s, favoring more top class manufacturers and higher spending than the GTs, which kept a lot more of their road similarities and had usually small, if not no entrants at some of the rounds. Manufacturers like Alfa Romeo, Chevron, Lola, Ligier, Alpine, Matra, Ford, Porsche, and Ferrari duked it out to become the most successful World Sports Car Championship drivers and teams, with Matra, Porsche, and Alfa Romeo having the most success. 1982 opened up again to prototypes, but this time an iconic and well-known style. Group C. The name World Endurance Championship came to be here, as it was an 8-race championship for drivers to fight for glory and titles. Thus began a long array of iconic names and cars. The Porsche 956, the Rondeau M382, the De Tomaso Pantera C, and lots more were some of the brands in the early 80s on the WSC grid. Though if there's one thing to take away, this was the era of Porsche. The 956 was a headline of success, with anything painted in Rothmans taking victories left, right, and center. In spite of this, best efforts of brands like Lancia with their LC284 and Jaguar with their XJR5, no one could catch the Porsche, as they had another car to play with coming along, the 962. If it wasn't a 956 that won, it was a 962. If it wasn't a Rothmans Porsche, it was a Yost or Kramer Porsche. This was the sight at the front of the field until 1987, where Jaguar and their XJR8 and XJR9 finally broke the streak of dominance from Porsche. Other brands like Sauber Mercedes and their C9 stopped Porsche and their infinite amount of cars from winning it all. Peugeot and their 905 came along in the early 90s too, being one of the last brands to commit to Group C. Throughout the 80s and 90s, so many big brands came and went through the sports car championship, it seemingly wouldn't end. However, 1992 would be the demise for the World Sports Car Championship. New regulations put in place increased costs beyond what were most willing to pay to run. Entries were dwindling despite the competition, and it was almost canceled by the FIA, but only barely as Peugeot convinced them to stick around for another year due to them putting up lots of money into their 905. They would win all but one race in a shortened schedule, as Toyota and their TS010 won at Monza. In spite of this, 1993 would have no championship for the World Sports Car Championship, and only Le Mans held any round for Group C cars. The next few years would be sporadic attempts to bring back top class racing around the world. The closest thing to this was the Global GT Series, or the FIA GT Championship, which featured GT class cars of GT1 and GT2, and on occasion GT3 and GT4. Le Mans was not a race on the calendar of any of the years, but it was the focus of a season for many teams as GT1 cars slowly became faster and less road-like. Lax rules allowed cars to be much more prototype-like during homologation, including cars such as the McLaren F1 GTR, the Porsche 911 GT1, and the Pano's GTR1. The first real global championship would occur in 1999. After the first ever running of the Petit Le Mans, the American Le Mans Series was established alongside IMSA's help, which is the current International Motorsports Association that runs modern IMSA today. Cars split between the previous World Sports Car class and GT1 would be merged together, with GT2 becoming GTS and GT3 becoming GT. The next year, in 2000, two new prototype classes of LMP 900 and LMP 675 combined into the same class of LMP and would lead the field, something that would become the basis for the future Le Mans Endurance Series and the future LMP1 and LMP2. The Le Mans Endurance Series was the closest they had come to having a global championship, although with all races being run in Europe. From 2004 to 2009, this is where most of the top class prototypes raced outside of ALMS. Outside of a few exempt races like the 2009 1,000 kilometers of Okayama, most of the racing took place within European borders, until finally in 2010, a global championship was announced, the Intercontinental Le Mans Cup. At the end of the 2010 year, three races at Silverstone, Road Atlanta, and Zhuhai took place, where all three would roll over, including the 12 hours of Sebring, 1,000 kilometers of Silverstone, 24 hours of Le Mans, and 6 hours of Imola. Something was brewing even bigger than this, and the ACO and FIA eventually agreed on a final settlement of a new global championship, to once and for all have a consistent series where the top manufacturers fighted it out. The FIA World Endurance Championship formed in 2012, starting off in Sebring alongside the American Le Mans Series, going to races in Spa, Le Mans, Silverstone, Sao Paulo, Bahrain, Fuji, and Shanghai. The previous 2 years saw Audi and Peugeot fight for the global title, a competitive war that had been going on since 2007, mostly to see who could win Le Mans overall. Peugeot, however, backed out of the WEC and didn't run around with their 908 LMP1, and so Audi became the only top flight manufacturer racing for the top spot. This, of course, is forgetting that Toyota joined the grid at Le Mans to fight Audi. Toyota was not expecting to join the grid so soon and beat Audi's new diesel hybrid R18 e-tron Quattros, but they gave them a good fight anyways. The new TSO30 took the lead at Le Mans before having to retire before halfway, with one of them having a wildly massive ride. Despite rushing to the grid, Toyota won at Sao Paulo just 3 months later and won Fuji and Shanghai to end the year, proving that they were here to stay at the top spot. In the GT class, Ferrari, Porsche, and Aston Martin were all fighting amongst each other with their 458, the 997, and the Vantage in GTE. Corvette also ran alongside with their C6R, but only in the AM class, with a customer car, as the three main manufacturers fought for Pro honors. Ferrari won the Pro class manufacturers title, whilst Larber Competition's Corvette won the AM class title. Toyota came swinging at Audi, but ultimately fell short, and Audi once again won both Le Mans and the overall championship in 2013. Ferrari reigned supreme in GTE Pro again, whereas Aston Martin won the title in AM. 2014 and LMP1 saw two major shakeups: a split between the LMP1 manufacturers and LMP1 privateers, known as LMP1H and LMP1L, although just for the year, as there were not that many private LMP1 entries. The other major change was Porsche joining the grid with their 919 hybrid. Toyota was able to win the overall championship with their new TSO40, yet still came short of winning Le Mans. One goal was achieved and one goal was missed. Ferrari, Porsche, and Aston Martin remained in Pro and AM, where Ferrari again won the Pro title and Aston Martin won the AM class. Porsche and LMP1 won their final race of the season at Sao Paulo, but were striving to achieve much more success in 2015. 2015 was the year of Porsche's return to domination. After Audi had won the first two races at Silverstone and Spa, Porsche went on to win every single race the rest of the year in LMP1, including Le Mans with their third entered car. LMP2 numbers grew massively from 2014, seeing G-Drive Racing, a team familiar to LMP2, claim the overall title. GTE Pro remained a three-headed race with Porsche winning a title in Pro, but Ferrari won GTM with SMP Racing as well. Nissan attempted to enter the WEC with their GTR LM Nismo LMP1, a radical front-engine prototype, but after adding three cars to Le Mans, they never ran the car again. A brand new Audi R18 and another new Toyota, the TSO50, lined up the grid in 2016 for LMP1. Toyota had to rush their TSO50 to get it to compete, as their TSO40 had already become obsolete just a year removed from winning the title. Despite this, Porsche and their inevitable progress with the 919 won the title for the second year in a row, as well as Le Mans via a tragic loss from Toyota on the final lap of the race. LMP2 in its final year of this specification was won by Signatech Alpine, a semi-new face to the grid. GTE Pro got a new manufacturer on board for the first time, Ford and their Ford GT. Solidly competitive from the start, they snatched a controversial win at Le Mans, but won less controversial races at Fuji and Shanghai. However, they weren't consistent enough throughout the year, and Aston Martin with their Dane train won the title, whilst Ferrari won the GTE title again. 2017 saw the loss of Audi in the LMP1 ranks. Rising costs and Dieselgate scandals forced them to leave the grid, leaving Porsche and Toyota now with the new TSO50 and 919 kits to fight it out. They went tooth and nail all season, with neither having a serious advantage over the other. Porsche still went on to win the title with a race to spare regardless, a fitting end to their LMP1 program that would also end after the 2017 season. LMP2 regulations were changed to include less variety of chassis suppliers and much more power and pace from their cars, with the former LMP1 privateer team in Rebellion Racing winning the title. GT Pro continued to contain the four brands fighting for the title, where AF Corsa's Ferrari again won the championship, and GTEM was won by Aston Martin Racing. 2018-19 was the WEC Super season, a change from a normal calendar year to a winter series. The season began in May of 2018 and ended in June of 2019, including two 24 hours of Le Mans. Major headlines outside of this included Fernando Alonso joining the Toyota LMP1 team for the season, and a flurry of new privateer entries. SMP Racing, which had previously done LMP2 stints, now contested in LMP1. Rebellion Racing joined LMP1 again after a year hiatus, alongside Dragon Speed, by Colas, who had contested LMP1 for a long time, and Ginetta. Despite all of this competition, Toyota was by far way outside their class. As being the only hybrid car on the grid, they could boost away from the rest of the field, and usually win every race by several laps. Outside of a disqualified victory at Silverstone, which went to Rebellion, Toyota won every single race, including both Le Mans by 12 laps and 6 laps to their next rivals. LMP2 was won by Signatech Alpine again, who stole the title away from Jackie Chan DC Racing at Le Mans. GTE Pro saw another new manufacturer join the grid in BMW with their M8, which they did not win a round, but finished second at Fuji and Sebring. Porsche won the GTE Pro title over Ferrari, and GTEM was a victory for Porsche and Team Project One, who also happened to win Le Mans to end the year. As much fun as the manufacturers' battle was in GTE, the LMP1 class seemingly had little action, and a lot of negative press went there. By this time, LMP1 was going to be phased out, as no new manufacturers wanted to join the class due to rising costs and the development curves considered too steep to compete with. Hypercar was announced as the replacement class, scheduled to debut for the 2020-21 WEC season. However, there was still the 2019-2020 season to be run, with Toyota now having to fight Rebellion and Ginetta with an equivalence of technology and success ballast to slow down performance and potentially allow an avenue for non-Toyota victories. It did happen as Rebellion won Shanghai and Coda, but in the end Toyota still won the title, and they were still the only team on the LMP1 grid at the final race at Bahrain. COVID affected the season, as you may have guessed, and instead of racing at Le Mans at the end of June, it ended in Bahrain in November, forcing the schedule to go back to a normal calendar year. LMP2 was a title fight between Jota Sport, an associate to Jackie Chan DC Racing, and United Autosports, a newcomer to the full-time season. United won the title in LMP2. GT Pro saw the loss of BMW and Ford for the season, but the trio of Aston Martin, Ferrari, and Porsche stuck around together, with Aston Martin winning the title, and AM being a Ferrari victory. The era of Hypercar began in 2021, with only two proper Hypercar entries on the grid to start with, and the other being of the slowed-down LMP1 car to compete in the class. Due to the performance of Hypercar being much slower than LMP1, LMP2 had to be slowed down to allow the Hypercar class to compete overall. Toyota would soon be joined by Glickenhaus for the several rounds, the first private manufacturer to build a hypercar. Toyota won every race this season despite that, and won the title, but with a rather competitive fight between both cars. LMP2 would be won by a new team, WRT, who had been known to run in the GT World Challenge, but never in the WEC. LMP2 also had a subclass introduced, Pro-Am, which wasn't labeled in its own separate class, but rather as one that competed for overall points and subclass points, with Racing Team Nederland getting that, just a year away from being defunct. GTE Pro was won by Ferrari, who now not only competed full-time against Porsche for the class, with the occasional runs by Corvette, but Corvette would join the season in 2022 in Pro. However, GTE Pro was also won by Ferrari AF Corse. The first mainstream manufacturer besides Toyota to join the grid in hypercar, Peugeot, was finally here, missing out of the first 3 races of the season, but joining in during the last 3. Toyota and Alpine were the only 2 competitors to do the full season again, and Toyota once again won the title. LMP2 was won by Jota, despite only winning 1 race all season, which happened to be the most important one, Le Mans. Pro-Am was won by AF Corse's LMP2. Speaking of AF Corse, in their final year of GT Pro, a class going away due to hypercar entrants growing for the 2023 season, Ferrari won the title over Porsche, and Corvette a distant third. GTM was won by Aston Martin win for TF Sport. 2023 was the year of the hypercar revival and top-class sports car racing coming back. 10 cars completed the full season, with 13 competing in at least one non-Le Mans round. Toyota was joined alongside Ferrari from their GTE Pro team, AF Corse, Porsche from their GTE Pro team, as well as customer teams in Jota and Proton competition, Cadillac with Chip Ganassi Racing, Peugeot again, Glickenhaus, and Vanwall, which was previously Bicola's in LMP1. Despite all the competition, Toyota's knowledge of their car and their cohesion as a team allowed them to win the title. But they lost the most important race of the year in Le Mans to Ferrari, a weakness that has been shown. LMP2 was won comfortably by WRT over Le Mans winners' interurable competition. GTM in its final season saw Corvette Racing, which now dropped down from Pau, win the title with 2 races to spare over the Iron Dames Porsche. We now have finally concluded this long saga, and it's time to talk about the schedule. The WEC's 12th season features the longest calendar since 2019-2020 at 8 races, starting off in Qatar for a 10-hour race, going to Imola and Spa with 6-hour races, Le Mans in the 24 hours, Sao Paulo returning for the first time since 2014 for 6 hours, Qatar returning for the first time since 2020 with another 6 hours, Fuji and Bahrain with their usual 6 and 8-hour races to round off the season. It's the first time since 2014 that the WEC has gone to 4 different continents, and the most variety on the calendar we've seen since 2019-2020, as only 3 of the 8 rounds take place in Europe, as opposed to 4 of 7 in 2023, 3 of 6 in 2022, and 4 of 6 in 2021. Entries for this year in Hypercar and the replacement to GTE, LMGT3 were so great that LMP2, the middle class, has been dropped for the season and for the foreseeable future. Outside of Le Mans, where 16 LMP2s will run, there are no grid spots for LMP2s. Hypercar and LMGT3 are the only classes on the grid, meaning for the first time ever in WEC's history, none of the original classes from 2012 will contest the full season. 19 Hypercars and 18 LMGT3s will compete the full season. Starting off in Hypercar, Cadillac returns to compete their second full season, with Earl Bamber and Alex Flynn returning as full-time drivers. The team has elected to only run 2 drivers for all 6-hour races, with the third driver being at Qatar, Le Mans, and Bahrain. For Qatar, it'll be Sebastian Bourdais. For Le Mans, Alex Palou. And for Bahrain, Renger van der Zande. At Porsche, the Penske factory cars remain the same as last year, except for one change. Matt Campbell in for Dane Cameron, who swapped spots between their IMSA and WEC rides. Michael Christensen and Frederick Machiavecchi are in the 5 Porsche alongside Campbell, and in the 6 Porsche are Kevin Estre, Lawrence Vantour, and Andre Lauterer. Expect Porsche, who have been dominant to start the year in the world of endurance racing, to be right up front once again. Toyota Gazoo Racing remains largely the same, minus one Jose Maria Lopez being swapped out for ex-Formula One driver Nick de Vries, who has eyed up the team in years before, but tried for a career in F1 to no avail. The 7 car includes de Vries and his team boss Kamui Kobayashi, with Mike Conway rounding it off. And last year's champions at Toyota are Sebastian Buemi, Ryo Hirakawa, and Brendan Hartley. The next up is Assetto Fraschini, very similar to the likes of Van Wall and Glickenhaus in that they are a privateer hypercar manufacturer. Do not expect much from this team, as their lineup is suboptimal and they're a very inexperienced group. Ex-Peugeot factory driver Jean-Carl Vernet highlights the crew, but the rest are nothing special, and Carl Watanabe and Antonio Serra, the only 2 silver-ranked drivers in hypercar. After that is Hertz Team Joda, a Porsche customer team. Radical new lineups for both cars now as they enter 2 full-time cars. Callum Ilott, an ex-IndyCar driver, joins Formula E driver Norman Nato and Will Stevens, who drive for Joda the previous year. The 38 crew has Jenson Button running the full season alongside 2 younger drivers in Phil Hansen and Oliver Rasmussen, both gold-ranked drivers. BMW is now joining the grid after doing a full season of IMSA in 2023. Their lineups take from the pool of factory drivers, highlighted by newcomer Raffaele Marciello, an ex-Mercedes factory driver and one of the best GT drivers in the world, who's won everything from the Spa 24-hour to Macau, and even won the FIA F3 and GT World Challenge Europe titles. No slouch are his teammates Dries Vanthoor and Marco Wittmann. The 20 BMW includes Formula E driver Robin Frijns, ex-Formula E driver René Rast, and 2020 DTM champion Sheldon van der Linde. After that is Alpine, with a lot of French talent to pick up from. Paul Chatin, a severely underrated driver, is a part of the 35 crew, including his other French compadre Charles Malaysia, and Austrian royalty himself, Ferdinand Habsburg. The 36 includes another Frenchman in Nico Lapierre alongside another underrated driver and Mattia Vazevier, and ex-Formula One driver Mick Schumacher. Ferrari AF Corsa are up next, with 2 factory and 1 customer entry. The 50 Ferrari finished highest up in points of the team cars, with Antonio Fuoco, Miguel Molina, and Nicholas Nielsen making up the team. 51 Ferrari got all of the glory as they won Le Mans and have a great crew as well in James Calado, Alessandro Pierguidi, and another ex-F1 driver in Antonio Giovinazzi. Now the third car, the customer Ferrari 83, is a good list of drivers as well, with Robert Kubica, Yifei, and Robert Schwartzman, as it could be just as good as the factory effort. Another Italian brand, Lamborghini, is joining the grid too. Iron Lynx's number 63 is made up of Daniel Kvyat, yet another ex-F1 driver, Eduardo Mortara, a current Formula E driver, and Mirko Bortolotti, as their combined speed will try and bring success to the brand at the top step of Le Mans. Peugeot and their radical no-wing design is temporary for 2024, as they will introduce a wing for Imola, but for now, they will run without a wing at Qatar. Even if it might hurt their performance, their crews in the 93 and 94 are stout. 93 is Mikkel Jensen, ex-FE driver Nico Mueller, and yes, ex-F1 and current FE driver Jean-Eric Verne. The 94 have ex-F1 drivers Paul de Resta and Stoffel van Dorn, who is the current Formula E driver, and Loic Duval on their side. Rounding off the 19-car grid is Proton Competition's Porsche of Harry Tincknell, Neil Jani, and newcomer Julian Andlauer, all capable drivers in their own right. LMGT3 is up next, a class based upon the GT3 regulations with slight modifications. Main thing to know is that it's essentially the same thing for simplicity's sake, so do not get it confused. Starting off this list is Aston Martin's Heart of Racing number 27, with Ian James, Daniel Mancinelli, and Alex Riberas. BMW WRT is up next, the same crew that operate the BMW Hypercar. Their two cars are very feisty, with the 31 including Darren Young, Sean Gelael, and Augusto Farfus, and the 46 having Ahmed Al-Harti, Valentino Rossi, yes, the Valentino Rossi, alongside Maxime Martin. Next up is Vista AF Corsa Ferrari with their two cars, the number 54 of Thomas Floor, Francesco Castellacci, and Davide Rigon. Car 55 is Francois Ariot, Simon Mann, and Alessio Rivera. After that is McLaren with United Autosports. Number 59 includes James Cottingham, Nicolas Costa, and Gregoire Saucy, whilst car number 95 has Josh Cahill, Nico Pino, and Marino Sato. After that is the Iron Lynx and Iron Dames with their two Lamborghinis. The Iron Lynx 60 is driven by Claudio Schiavone, Matteo Cressoni, and Frank Pereira, whilst the all-female Iron Dames 85 is driven by Sarah Bobby, Dorian Pin, and Michelle Gatting. Proton Competition runs the Ford GT3 as well, numbered 77 and 88. 77 has Ryan Hardwick, Zachary Robichon, and Ben Barker line up for them, and the 88 has Jordi O'Roda, Mikkel Peterson, and Dennis Olsen climb aboard that crew. Lexus, an associate with Toyota, adds two more cars on the grid with the 78 and 87. First up is 78 with Arnold Raban, Timur Bogoslavsky, and Kelvin van der Linde. And the 87 is Takeshi Kimura, Esteban Masson, and Jose Maria Lopez, who lands here after riding the 6 Toyota for previous seasons. Corvette also joins the grid with two cars for TF Sport. 81 is Tom Van Rompuy, Rui Andrade, and Charlie Eastwood, whereas 82 is Hiroshi Koizumi, Sebastian Bod, and Daniel Juncadella. The final three cars on the grid include two Manthey Porsches, one EMA and one Pure Racing. Car 91 is Yasser Shaheen, Morris Schuring, and Ricard Leitz. And Pure Racing's 92 is the same as it has been, Alex Malyakin, Joel Sturm, and Klaus Bachler. And last but not least, D Station with their Aston Martin Vantage with Clement Matteau, Erwin Bastard, and Marco Sorensen. Now that everything is settled, where can you watch the races? On the FIAWC.tv, which is a paid subscription service, you can watch all the races for around €60 a year, getting access to FP3, qualifying, and the races. And for Le Mans, it's every session. If you do happen to be in America, you cannot get access to Le Mans or Lone Star Le Mans. But do not worry. The WEC signed a deal with Max to cover those races in America, so tune into those channels for the races. For further information, check your local providers to get in more details about it. The FIA WEC season starts now, and 37 cars can compete and win their championship in respective classes. 10 hours of action highlight starts the year in Qatar, beginning at 11 a.m. and ending in the darkness at 9 p.m. Some of the best drivers in the world, with some of the best presentation in the world, with some of the best racing in the world, with some of the best manufacturers in the world. A season to remember is coming up. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and consider liking and subscribing. I'm really enjoying making these videos.